Many look to America's heartland to gauge how we're doing and where we're going. So we spoke with Wisconsin's Tom Tiffany, a dairyman, businessman, and now two-term member of Congress, who's focused on securing the border, balancing the budget, and making sure we all have the water we need when we need it. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
That often is missing in politics.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
It's a nightmare.
Those are the facts.
We have to solve everything.
What's in this tea?
So, Congressman, great to have you with us today. You came from Madison, Wisconsin as a legislator, working hard for the people of Wisconsin. Now you're into the rough and tumble of politics day and night in Washington, D.C. Was that a big change?
Well, we learned, if you remember, back in 2011, after Scott Walker was elected as governor, Act 10 was passed, and there were 80,000 people that descended on the state capitol. Right. Remember?
I do.
So I like to say I was there for the troubles. And we were prepared after what happened in Wisconsin for anything that hits us out here in Washington, D.C.
You are described as a dam man. Literally, you worked on dams for a good part of your career, so obviously you're used to pressure. Tell me what that does in terms of construction dam management and why it impacts one of the most important issues today, which is water.
When my wife and I bought our small business, Wilderness Cruises, which we owned and operated for 20 years, one of the things that came with it was the dam tending job. So there's a company in northern Wisconsin that runs reservoirs, and one of them is the Willow Flowage, which is where we live, and that's where I tended the dam for 29 years. The only regret I have about being elected to Congress and coming out to Washington, D.C. is I lost my dam job. They would not allow me to do it anymore because you had to go take the readings at the dam every day. And then they'll have you do gate changes and stuff like that. So I wasn't involved with the construction and things like that, but I was largely a data gatherer. I got paid to walk the dog. Every morning we walked to the dam, took the head level readings, precipitation readings, stuff like that, turned them in, and then if they wanted gate changes, we'd go do those gate changes. Did that for 29 years. It was a part-time job, it helped us be able to survive in northern Wisconsin.
All I can say in response to that is that sounds damn good. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. You're now on the Natural Resources Committee, so water is a big part, obviously, of what you deal with. How is the nation today in terms of its availability of water, safe drinking water, and of course, we'll get into agriculture and the incredibly important need of water for growing the crops we need.
Our environment has not been cleaner in 40 or 50 years or longer. The great environmental awakening that happened in the 60s and 70s, the proverbial Lake Erie being on fire and stuff like that, it was a great awakening in America. And everyone agrees we had to make sure and fix the environment. And we've largely done that. The reductions in emissions in America are terrific. And we have more people with clean water now. But there's always more to be done, right? We always want to do a good job. And where we're at, Lake Superior is only an hour north of where I live, largest freshwater lake in the world. And so people take great care, great pride. They want to make sure that we have clean water for both humans and all those critters that live in our environment also. So it is always a priority, and it's a big priority in the Natural Resources Committee. We also need to be able to balance the environment with the economy, because if you don't have prosperity, you can't put those programs in place that are going to keep the environment clean. And so, as I always say, we can have both.
Right.
We can have both jobs, a vibrant economy, and a clean environment. And I would say they're not mutually exclusive, because if you don't have a strong economy, you're not going to have the revenue for a stewardship program or something like that.
When I was talking to a leading member of the conservation movement, I remember that individual saying something that kind of surprised me, Congressman, which is we really need farmers to be very productive enough so that they're successful to grow the food the world needs. But on the other hand, we want them to do that with a sense of maintaining their roles as stewards of the land and the environment. It's a win-win when so many times in the last 20 years, it seems like we made it a win-loss proposition.
Yeah, that's right. They've treated it as a zero-sum game, that you either win or you lose. That's simply not the case. We can all be winners on this. And while we still have some of the sins of the past that we need to fix, let's continue to fix them. You're not going to fix them overnight, but as long as we're moving in the right direction. And I think a classic case, as we speak here, the California fires have happened in LA. And think about, you had an empty reservoir there. And one of the things that's been very discouraging is that California allows almost all of their runoff to go into the Pacific Ocean. Why not store more of that? There's, I believe, a dam or two out there that they could raise like 30 feet, be able to store more water, because it's a very arid climate. It's a Mediterranean climate. But if you're going to have, 40 million, 50 million people live there, they need water. We can take care of both the humans that are in the environment as well as making sure we have a clean environment that's good for all those critters and the stuff that lives in the environment.
So did you see the California situation as something that was not entirely caused by nature, that, man, as they say, had some part to play in this, and that there are lessons to take from it?
This was a man-made disaster. This is decisions made by politicians that were wrong. And they did not utilize the water resource that they have. I was just in Yosemite a year and a half ago as part of the Natural Resources Committee, went out there. Over the previous about 5 to 10 years, they lost 20% of their sequoias. And it's because they were not managing their forest properly. Sequoias can resist fire. If you see those trunks of those trees,
huge trees,
they can resist.
Right.
What happened is you had smaller trees growing up underneath them, and they got tall enough so they acted as a ladder for a fire to get to the crown of the sequoias. But you had the radical environmental groups that were filing a lawsuit saying, no, you can't cut those trees. Well, that ended up costing us 20% of the sequoias in California. The preservationist mentality does not work. It does not lead to prosperity, and actually ends up harming the environment. What we need to do is have good management.
Wisconsin is one of the key swing states in America. And we saw that again in the November elections. Everyone was watching and learning about the difference between Dane County and the city of Milwaukee and everything in between. How do you think President Trump and the change he wants to bring into play, how do you think the people of Wisconsin will react to what I think America has been asking for a very long time?
I mean, people spoke overwhelmingly on November 5th for President Trump to also win the popular vote, to get a greater percentage of the votes in every single state across the country. I mean, it was a significant win. And it's part of the reason why you see Democrats demoralized to a certain extent at this point. The question for them is going to be, are you going to change your policy prescriptions? So far, they're saying we're going to continue down the same road. I think that's great for us Republicans because there's such a clear contrast, whether it's economic, environmental, cultural issues, whatever the case may be. Democrats are really in a bad spot. I expect President Trump here, as he goes into his presidency, I think immediately he's going to implement a reform agenda, starting with executive orders. And we in Congress need to deliver also. And I was so proud of our state. We were the state that took him over 270, if you remember.
I do.
On November 5th that night, we're the ones that took him over 270, and how appropriate, because we were one of the states in 2016 when he won that people were surprised, that were stunned. Remember, Hillary Clinton never made a visit to Wisconsin. Donald Trump surprised everybody. Once again, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania came through.
Top priorities for this Congress, this new government under President Trump.
It's the agenda President Trump talked about. We have to secure the border. That's number one. You do not have a country if you don't have a secure border. Number two, the high cost of living. We need to deal with that. And a big part of that high cost of living, I'd say there's two components. One is excessive government spending. We have racked up way too much debt. We need to do our job and begin to pull back on that spending that has driven inflation. But the second thing is energy independence. Diesel fuel moves the world. And you want to bring down the price of groceries? You bring down the price of diesel fuel. We have to have low-cost energy, and the president knows that more clearly than anybody. In order to bring down the high cost of living, you got to have affordable energy. Look at the times of prosperity in America. We have low-cost energy.
You were recently in Mar-a-Lago, as I heard, and one of the people you had a conversation with was Elon Musk, one of my favorite people out there now. Obviously, he is talking about getting very serious and helping lead the government effort to tighten our belts a bit, see where waste is, get rid of that waste, become more efficient, all the rest of those things. That's got to be music to your ears, right?
It is. It's part of the reason that I ran for the state legislature. We had like a $3 billion deficit in 2010. And I told people, I said, this is part of the reason I'm running. In fact, my opponent made fun of me saying, the people don't care about budget deficits. Well, I think people do care about budget deficits, but you got to tie it to what is going to happen to them. This is why a dollar is worth 80 cents now compared to 5 years ago because of inflation, because of that reckless spending that's going on. So it's really important that we rein that in. And if we don't, the bond markets are going to tell us, and they are now. When you look at the yield on those treasury bonds, they have went up and up because they're saying, we need a little greater return because you guys are a higher risk in the federal government. For us to buy those treasury bonds, we need a little greater return. So we're going to pay one way or another. Either Congress fixes this or the bond markets are going to fix it for us. Yeah, I had a chance to sit next to Elon Musk and talk to him a little bit. This is a really important thing that he's doing. And if anybody can do it, it is him. But I think the greatest thing he and Vivek can do is be the public relations arm of DOGE to tell the American people, here's where the problems are.
There you go.
That they can identify those individual things, like the $100 billion that are going in EV mandates for the so-called green cars as part of the Green New Deal. People aren't buying the EVs. They don't want them. Up where I'm at, it's going to be 25 below here in a couple days. Right. And EV does not operate in 25
not
below
so well.
temperature. So stuff like that, I think they're going to do a really good job to highlight the folly of the spending that's been going on in Washington, D.C. And hopefully the public picks up on that and the big megaphone they got, and they just drive the messages into Congress and say, we want you to cut those programs.
How patient should the American people be for all this suggested change to be put into place and to start making a difference?
They've been patient too long. This has been going on for decades. How did we end up the way we are? Because they were patient and they said, well, things will get better. Well, you've seen things have not gotten better. I'm a budget hawk. I sit on the Freedom Caucus. I mean, we are conservative by nature, but you shouldn't exempt us. If you're watching this show right now and you see that there's some reckless spending going on or whatever that should be changed, contact our office. You should hold us accountable.
As we move into, the importance of governance, still politics is just barely off the middle of the road, but it's coming back again full square. On April 1st, the state of Wisconsin will elect another justice to the Supreme Court. Right now, it splits ideologically 4-3 liberal over conservative. It was 4-3 conservative over liberal just a year and a half ago before a liberal beat a conservative for an open position. That race consumed over $50 million in campaign spending, over $50 million for a single judicial seat. And they're making predictions already that the race ahead will probably eclipse that. Why is this race so terribly important in the state of Wisconsin? It's obviously important, I think, for the country as one of the early signs, you might say, of how people are reacting to the new world.
It's because Wisconsin is a bellwether state. I mean, it's as simple as that. What happens in Wisconsin can affect all the rest of the country. I mean, if President Trump loses Wisconsin, he still might have won, but it would have been tougher. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, Wisconsin, Michigan, as we saw in 16 and 24, they move together, right? We really are a bellwether state. But the choice is simple for people. Do you want 4 people to decide all your public policy in Wisconsin? Do you want to make the legislature irrelevant? Do you want to make the governor irrelevant? Because that's what progressives on the court are doing since they won in 2023. They've said the redistricting that you did that is in your constitution and is supposed to be done by the legislature, we don't care. We're overruling it. Ballot drop boxes has already been ruled that they're illegal, not contained in statute. We don't care. We're just going to make up the law out of whole cloth. That's the kind of stuff that's going to happen, has happened, and will continue to happen. Photo ID, something 70-80% of the people agree with. I voted for it back in 2011 when it became the law in Wisconsin. I will guarantee you, if a progressive wins this race in Wisconsin to give them a majority 4-3, they will get rid of photo ID. And those are the kind of decisions that are, if you want to have a representative democracy, you're going to vote for Brad Schimmel, two-time attorney general, and serves as a judge now in Wisconsin, understands his role as a constitutional conservative, that he's not the legislature, he's not the governor. But this race is, I believe, as important as the governor's race in 2026 to decide the future of Wisconsin. Because when you have a court that understands the constitutional underpinnings and you have good jurisprudence that's going on, you have certainty for the people. What happens is when they become politicians, like we've seen over the last couple of years, then your state's headed for trouble.
Well, we just saw Pam Bondi at the confirmation hearing for Attorney General. Just for disclosure, I've worked with Pam for years, and what you see is exactly what you're going to get. But her biggest message to that Senate committee that day was law and order. We are going to uphold it. We are a nation of laws. So you talk about the Supreme Court situation in Wisconsin or any Supreme Court in the country. How important is it that we get back to, as they say, get back to the basics? And the basics in a judicial panel or court of any dimension is, or should be, law and order, upholding the laws of the land.
I believe that there are two pillars that were put in place by our founders that uphold a free republic that we've all thrived in over the past 2+ centuries. And one is private property rights, the right to own your own property, to be able to improve it how you choose to. It is something that much of mankind does not do. People question why Russia has never really broke through and been really prosperous. There's some really good stuff that's been written out there about how they moved at times towards having private property rights, but they never made it there. We did. That's one of the pillars. The other one is the rule of law. You have to have a rule of law that Lady Justice is blind. That's what Pam Bondi came through with. And sitting on the Judiciary Committee, the thing that we've talked about over the last couple years under the Biden administration and the Biden Department of Justice is the dual system of justice. We've seen it with President Trump, but we've seen it with conservative Catholics. We've seen it with people going to school board meetings. We've seen it with the big tech companies where the Justice Department's worked hand in glove with them to censor people. I mean, there's been this dual system of justice. And that's the other message I thought Pam Bondi delivered very clearly, is there can only be a single justice system in Wisconsin, and everyone should expect Lady Justice to be blind.
Well, Congressman, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I think I can now say this without fear of great criticism. You're a damn good man. Take care of yourself.
Really good to join you.
Take care. Good luck ahead. We really need this country to pull together and be what we have always designed to be, something great.
I urge people, you can help us as the average citizen. You did your job on November 5th, but continue to press your congressional members to get this Trump agenda enacted, because we can make America great again.
Well, thank you for reminding all of us of our civic duty, and you're absolutely right. We're all in this together.